Chronometry calibrated. The gateway will open in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Analyzing data. Likelihood of parallel universes now at 28%. Continuing analysis of the many worlds hypothesis.
1994 was a watershed year for Star Trek. The Next Generation had just finished a legendary 7-year run. Deep Space Nine was in full swing. Voyager was rapidly in development. The franchise had never been more popular, but the TOS movies were done, Gene Roddenberry was dead, and Paramount decided the best people to take over their film franchise was a group of TV directors, producers, and writers who had never made a movie before. This was that movie. Welcome, everyone. I'm Gay Fesh. Joining me, as always, is a lovely Moss.
Hello.
And DemonMama.
Why, hello there.
And today, we are doing Star Trek Generations, the first of the TNG movies. This season on the Many Worlds Hypothesis, we'll be doing all of the TNG movies. And this is the first one. And it is also the first one.
Yes, it is also the first one. Most certainly.
So, in a welcome turn from our previous season, I loved this movie, like a lot. There were a lot of things about this movie that I really appreciated. I liked the themes, and I liked how it kind of subtly refers to itself and like ties things in a way that's like, you do kind of have to be paying attention in order to pick up on those things. And I had a good time, and I cried because it was emotionally evocative, which I consider to be a good thing in this case.
Emotions are a big thing in the movie, and I will have things to say about that. DemonMama, what do you think of this movie?
I didn't love this movie. I didn't hate this movie, but I didn't really like it that much, or I definitely didn't love it. I said last night to everyone that I watched it with, which was pretty much everyone in my house. Yeah, I definitely said that I wanted to hear a lot of Gay Fesh's info on this because I know nothing about the production of this movie, and I wanted to basically be like, I need to know what's going on with this. And the fact that it was made by, I noticed that Rick Berman was this one of the writers for this movie.
No, he was the producer.
It also said he was a writer, and then the screenplay was not done by him, but it said writing or written by.
He probably got a story by credit or something like that. I didn't look at the exact thing, but it was Brandon Braga and Ronald D. Moore wrote this.
They were the writers, okay? Because I was like, huh. And it definitely makes sense that this was a movie that was written by TV directors. And at least from my view, where I'm like, okay, there's so many pieces of this movie that feel like they're setting up for like an arc, and then they don't quite come together by the end of the movie. And it's like, okay, so then there's going to be an episode. Next episode will have the finish of this arc, and next episode will have the finish of this arc. That's what it felt like to me in this movie. Shatner seemed to be having a great time, and I loved it whenever he was on screen. Other actors, I'm not so sure that they were having as good of a time. I don't know. I didn't know how to read Patrick Stewart in this movie. His performance in this movie was at times like really moving, and at other times felt like he didn't know what he was doing with the emotions. Like there was a lot of emoting, but I didn't feel like there was direction to it, which was very strange because I always feel like he's a presence on screen. But yeah, that's my general thoughts, my immediate thoughts of the movie. We'll dive into everything, I'm sure. So
this is a fairly controversial movie in just the Star Trek fandom as a whole. I think most people walked away not feeling very satisfied with it. And honestly, I think any time that they were going to set out and go, we're going to kill Kirk, like, I don't know that there is necessarily a way that you could have done that really would have satisfied people, especially in a movie that's not at all about Kirk. He's not in the second act at all. He's at the beginning. He dies twice in this movie, in the first act and in the third act. And he doesn't build any relationships with any of the characters. Not really, even with Picard. They talk for like 10 minutes. They actually reshot the ending of it because the original scene was just Soren shooting him in the back. and then he dies wordlessly.
Wow. Well, I'm glad they did. I'm
Wait.
glad they changed that.
Yeah, I'm glad they changed that. I'm glad they gave him some final lines. I was watching the commentary with Braga and Moore. The last line that they wrote for him was, "It was fun," but Shatner himself wanted to add the "oh my" afterward, and they hated the "oh my," and I love the "oh my," so I don't know what they're talking about. But it's actually kind of crazy because Braga and Moore also wrote the TNG finale. They wrote All Good Things, which is one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek ever made. And then they did this one, which was very confused. And I think it was a case of they just struck the iron while it's hot with All Good Things, because they said they worked that script out in like 3 weeks. And this movie took them like a year and a half to write. It's just one of those things. And I guess maybe just more cooks in the kitchen. When it's a movie, there's like studio expectations. You got to have this, you got to have that. You've got to wrangle your stars because, Shatner probably is the biggest name in the movie and he's only showing up as a guest, and you got to make sure he's happy. So you got to give him his horses, which, by the way, those were his horses because Shatner's an equestrian and he rented them to the film. He didn't even loan them. He's just like, yeah, you can pay me to use my horses.
That's awesome.
I'm going to ride for the movie.
Yeah, I respect that.
That's how you. Yeah, that's how you hustle. But yeah, I just feel like if they were going to do a crossover with them, they should have like gone whole hog and actually made the movie about the crossover and not just kind of like slapped it in at the end.
That's what I said at the end. Like at the end of the movie, I was like, I'm really surprised that Kirk wasn't a bigger part of this movie. That they didn't like just straight up have him, I don't know, get warped onto the future position of the bridge or something like that, something weird. I really expected that to be the way that it was going, and I was surprised that they didn't. And it was not like, usually I'm like, well, my expectations were not like, I didn't read the movie correctly. But in this case, I was like, I think it would have been better because the way that it is, it just feels like it's tacked on almost.
Yeah. Especially
because there's this disconnect, and I see what they're going for, but I don't think they quite make the landing. It's like they miss the landing zone, which is that, like, I know they're trying to set up like a generational, the movie's named Generations. The movie has a lot of fixation about children, families, other paths, legacy, but they don't really set up or they don't fully make the landing on this like difference between like the family line and the line of the Enterprise, and there's not really a proper passing of the torch that resolves this angst that Picard has that's so eminent in the emotional space of the movie. This like, oh my God, the person who I felt like I was relieved of the duty of carrying on my family line, which is a huge and understandable and real pressure. But it never actually fully resolves. Like he just kind of sidesteps it in a weird way. He goes to this alternate world where he sees he has a family and he goes, well, that's not real. But the connection isn't quite made between him and Kirk going, you're basically, our kid is basically this Enterprise and the Federation as a whole. And they never really fully lock that in. They just it's kind of left there and you kind of, I don't know, infer it. But that was just weird to me. It was weird that was like, that it was kind of just like missed like that.
I'm going to use this moment to cross-promote something that I'm working on, and DemonMama knows what I'm talking about, but I'm working on basically a page one rewrite of this movie as a fan fiction. And I might have the first chapter up by the time this goes live, but if so, I'll have like a link to that. But one of the things that I am aiming to do with that is to make sure that like all of the characters have a proper actual like interaction with each other.
Yeah.
That isn't just tacked on at the end, that there's like meaningful connections between the characters. But another thing is that I'm actually not a fan of how this movie treated Data. Yes. I think it's funny. I think Brent Spiner does a phenomenal job with what the movie was going for. I just don't think it's respectful to his character in that way, to treat him reaching something that has been his life's goal as comic relief. Yeah. And it was another thing, like, I've got the DVD box set for all the first 10 Star Trek movies, so I'm gonna do the commentary when I watch it, and it was the writer's commentary, and they were talking about how it's really hard to come up with things for Deanna Troi to do, because in the future, who needs therapists? That's kind of like Gene Roddenberry's like message is what they were trying to carry on. They're like, if we're all evolved so much that we don't even need therapists anymore, what does she even do? And I'm like, well, that's the wrong way to go about thinking about we're so evolved that we don't need therapists. No, we're so evolved because we utilize therapists, I think is a better way. But another thing is that we have here this character who has gained human emotions for the first time in his life, and he doesn't talk to Deanna Troi until the end of the movie about it.
Yeah.
Like sure, she's got the scene where she's helping Picard through the grief of losing his family. And I really like that scene. I like, especially when he tries to downplay his grief and he says it's all right, and she's like, no, it's not all right. You need to sit with this. You need to grieve this. You lost your family. That's never a situation that's all right.
Yeah.
But in terms of what else they had for her to do, they were like, oh yeah, we'll give her the keys to the ship. She gets to fly it while it blows up. Which, I mean, it's fun to give characters new things to do. Like, it was fun on the show when they had Beverly command the ship when everyone else was on the planet. It's fun to put characters in new situations. It was fun when Deanna Troi took the bridge officer's exam thing and had to order Hollow Geordi to his death. You know, it's interesting to see characters who are outside the normal chain of command get other things to do in the story. And the writing for women on Star Trek has long and historically been lacking. And I don't think that this movie was particularly doing them any favors. And I think there could have been more that they could have done with Deanna in this movie.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense. Also, he never makes up with Beverly, just as a random little...
That's true.
He never apologizes, and no one tells him, like, hey, you could just apologize. You say you misunderstood what she was saying, you know. There's no resolution to that.
She wasn't doing a good job of explaining why it was funny to begin with. She was just like, you got to get into the spirit of things. I'm like, no, the joke is that they're humiliating Worf. It's a moment where Worf is having a big momentous upward movement in his career, so they're hazing him a little bit. It's a hazing ritual. That's the comedy in there. But she didn't explain that to him at all. So it's not his fault that he was like, oh, falling in the water's funny. Okay, I'll do it again.
It's very specifically the tension of him walking the plank and the fact that there was a risk of him falling and he succeeded and didn't fall, but then the removal of the plank caused him to fall. Like, that is why it is funny. It's the whole moment and not just like someone falling in the water. And she did not explain it. Nope.
No. Also, I think it is funny that she gets pushed in. I think it's hilarious. Yeah, sure. I don't know. It's kind of...
It's ironic, I think.
Also, I have to talk about that ship that they were on. That is the Lady Washington. It was constructed in Gig Harbor, Washington in 1989 for the centennial of the state. It is the official state ship of my state. It has been in several movies, including Pirates of the Caribbean, where it was the HMS Interceptor, and I have been on it.
That's awesome.
That's rad.
In fact, I went on it on a 4th grade field trip, and I was in 4th grade in 1994, the year this movie was filmed, which means that I was on it months after the entire TNG cast had been on it. So
that's so cool. Yeah, that must have been a cool moment.
I didn't even know that at the time. I was just like, oh, this is a cool field trip. It was like years later that I put 2 and 2 together. They're like, that was that boat. That's cool.
That's really cool.
Love that.
Yeah, I kind of hated everything that they did with Data in this movie. Mostly not because of because of Brent Spiner's performance. And not even some of the jokes. Like, some of the joke stuff was like, it was funny in the context, like his inappropriate laughter and all that kind of stuff. That was fine. It's just that they didn't really go anywhere with it. They didn't resolve it. They didn't like finish it out. And it is like, that seems to be like one of the culminating decisions of his entire character. Yeah. And that's very weird to give it so little screen time and so little resolution. That in the end, he's just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to keep this. But I don't know, like there was so much room for it to be like, I'm thinking back about this movie, I'm like, okay, so why don't we build out this relationship between Picard and Data? That this is like an opportunity for Picard to be a fatherly figure to a functionally emotional child who doesn't know, and they have one moment
in stellar cartography when they're in the Cerebro room.
Yeah, and then
It's
that's
straight
it.
up Cerebro.
Yeah.
I was like, I've never seen that room before. What the hell's this? But yeah, no, it's like, and so I was just like, oh, I want more of that, especially because of all the stuff that's going on in Picard's storyline, which is like, you know, the heaviest part of this whole story is this line of grief and losing his family, and, you know, which hits a lot if you have watched the show. Because, you know, his brother and his relationship to his brother is a huge part of, and his relationship to his brother's family is a huge part of his story throughout the TNG show.
I don't know that it's necessarily throughout the whole show, but it was a very important moment because it was after he had, after Best of Both Worlds, when he was Locutus.
Yes.
They needed a episode that was just like a bit of downtime where they're like, okay, that was such a big episode. We need these characters to breathe. They can't just go off to the next adventure. So they had Picard go to his family vineyard and just stay with his family for a while and get in a fight with his brother and work out some longtime family issues and, you know, bond with his nephew and stuff like that. So
roll around in the mud.
Yeah. That was a good episode. That was a really strong episode.
Yeah, it was great. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's like, there's just a lot, like there's a lot of pieces here that I think are good on their own, but that I feel like their resolution is lacking. And for me, that it takes away from the final product in a way. Also, another thing that I'll say on that is that the pacing of this show or of this movie feels very odd in that, like, I don't know. It feels like they didn't have an idea of how they wanted to time everything out. There are scenes that feel like they should be much longer, and there are scenes that are very long that feel like they should be much shorter. There's other stuff I want to say about production elements, but we'll get to that in a minute, I guess.
Why don't we talk about Malcolm McDowell? Because he was having a good time.
Yes. Yeah.
I love Malcolm McDowell. You know, there are movies of his that I've seen that I won't watch again for other reasons, like Clockwork Orange made me physically ill to see, so I'm not going back to that one. But he was great in it. But like anytime he just gets to play, just like Soren's not a complicated character. He's Peter Thiel in space. He'll destroy the universe just so that he can achieve his immortality. Like that's literally Peter Thiel. They're not complicated characters, so just have fun with it and ham it up. And he's like excited that he gets to be the one to kill Kirk. So, you know, let him have fun with it.
I think that he fit in just right with the Klingons, and I liked that.
Oh yeah, he had great chemistry with.
Also, I knew that he was the bad guy the second I saw him. I was like, "That's the bad guy."
Well, he's Malcolm McDowell. Of course, he's the bad guy.
Yeah, he's typecast a little bit.
Yeah, the Klingon, the whole Klingon ship, that was like one of the most like fun parts of the movie. They're all hamming it up. It's funny and good, and I liked all that stuff. And he does fit in perfectly. And yeah, so I have no complaints about that. I don't think he was like a bad villain. I do think he's fairly
one note.
Yeah, he's fairly one note, but also I don't think that's necessarily a bad decision for this movie, especially if they had executed on all of the other stuff going on. If you had sort of a one note villain to be the foundation, like for the movement of the plot, and then everything else is just focusing on like what unfolds as a result of that. But they did give him a lot of screen time, and they did give him, I don't know, it seemed like there was a lot of time. Maybe just because he was so fun in the role, he was having such a good time. It didn't feel like they gave him a lot of time on the screen that could have been used towards developing the relationships of the characters that were tied to the themes that this movie brought up. I feel like they probably should have done that. Maybe resisted the urge to, like, you know, have him throw another goofy ass one-liner out.
There's some of the stuff that I think is extraneous, like the scene where he's interrogating Geordi. That just feels like, okay, let's have him kick the puppy. Like, they've got LeVar Burton strapped up with, he's got like a belt tied around his neck, like he's doing a reunion of Roots, and they have Soren just being like excessively like ableist to him, is like normal is what everyone else is and you are not. And then he interrogates him about trilithium, something that he's the expert in. Why does he need Geordi to tell him about trilithium? That whole scene doesn't make sense except to be like, we've got to have the bad guy kick a puppy.
Yeah, they could have literally just had them like shown the Klingons like tampering with the visor, which that part was funny. I love that part where they're like, "Ooh, rewind, there's the number."
Lursa and Betor, the Duras sisters, the actors for them, when they found out that they were going to be in the movie, they like immediately like, well, this is the 90s, so it wasn't the group chat, but they got in touch with the other Klingon actors because they're all friends. They're like, hey, we're going to be in the movie. And Robert O'Reilly, who plays Gowron, the guy who stares in Klingon, he was just like, oh, honey, no, didn't they tell you Klingons only go to the movies to die?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, aren't they in DS9? Or is that like... Okay,
they are in DS9, but that was a first season episode, and this came out in... Yeah, so the DS9 was like... second or third season at this time. I think it was in its third season when this movie came out. So
I was having a little trouble placing this chronologically in the canon or whatever. I was like, I gotta ask Gayfish about this. Okay, can I go on about a couple of little weird production things?
Sure.
So first thing is a good thing. I thought the set work in this movie was great. I liked pretty much all the sets. Maybe with the exception of like the weird like rock and scaffolding thing at the end, which I don't know. It was okay. They just spent a lot of time in it for what it was. And I was like, I don't know. But the other sets were great.
That's not even, I mean, I guess technically it's a set, but like it was, they were filming in Valley of Fire in Nevada. So that was like an actual just, you know, hill
Beautiful
that they just
location.
built some stuff on top
yeah,
of.
It's pretty, no doubt. I just was like, okay, you know, like we're clambering over rocks a bit. And
also they filmed there in like the middle of summer, and it was like 110 degrees while they're having and it's like I think this was like, I don't know, maybe like 8,000 feet up. Like it was a hike to get up there.
Whoa.
That was a fucking climb. And so they're already tired when they're there, and then it's hot, and then they have to film a brutal fight sequence where they're punching each other and falling off of bridges and shit. And then they had to reshoot that sequence because it tested horribly with audiences, and so they went back like later in the year, like September, October, and filmed it. Like, oh, it's 75. This is so much nicer.
Whose dumbass idea though? Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So that was my nice shout out. I really liked a lot of the different sets that they did. I thought all the panels that we got to see, they do look a little different than the shows and stuff, but they're cool and they look good. They
redressed a lot of the because they were the TV sets, but they were like, look, this is going to be 30 feet tall now, so we have to add some detail to it.
Yeah, and it worked. A lot, like all the sets that I saw in there, I enjoyed. I thought it was great and looked good. Now, there's a couple of production things. The first one I'm going to say is, did they have like a severe injury for one of the stunt people? Because Malcolm McDowell's stunt person at the end, when he falls down the rope off the rock, he clearly nails his head on that rock.
I saw that. Yeah. I was like, is that like a real location, or is that like a foam wall? Because he just like...
That was a real location. The Memory Alpha page does not say anything about injuries during filming.
Maybe they settled, because I saw that and I was like, I did not think that was a foam rock. It did not look like a foam rock. I'm like, that looks like a real rock. Hoping. And that guy looks like he nailed his freaking head. And I was like,
crazy.
That was not CG. So that was one that immediately I was like, oh my God. Okay. Mm-hmm. So my second thing, the first half of this movie had some of the weirdest lighting decisions, and I don't know why.
You're talking about the lighting on the Enterprise, where they're mostly going with like yellow exterior lighting coming in, like they didn't have like the lights inside the ship for the most part. Like in Picard's ready room, his lights are off. They're just getting light from the sun through, and it's like, that's really dark, man.
And they go to 10 dramatic. It is dramatic, but it's like almost like too dramatic. Like it's almost laughable, and like there's these extremely harsh shadows being cast all over the room and all over everyone's faces. They're all got like these like dark, like half their faces in the pure black, and I'm like, wow, that is a decision. And then they go to 10 forward, which 10 forward is always like a lively, and if it's a grim place, there's a big reason for it. And this was not like a grim moment particularly.
Well,
And
you
it
had
looks
Picard and Soren there. Like,
yeah, they have their
Soren had
confrontation, but like
time is the fire in which we burn, which is a gut punch for Picard, who just found out that his family burned to death. So
yeah, but it feels like that would have landed more in like you get blindsided by a trigger to your grief in the middle of a room where everybody else is having fun, which is like or being okay. You know what I mean? Which is kind of like the thing. I'm thinking back to there's an episode of TNG where there's a big hostage situation in 10 Forward, and it gets turned into this whole, like, I think there's like some kind of radiation they have to do, some trick that they have to do there. Anyway, the room is like, it's trashed in that. And it's like, it stands out. It was very weird to see 10 Forward like bathed in radioactive yellow light, and like none of the interior lights are on. And it just was very strange, the whole first half. And then later in the movie, they don't really do it as much. It's like, okay, we're starting to get some of the normal Star Trek, like, you know, ship lighting. It was just a weird thing that stood out to me, and I didn't entirely understand what the point was of such exaggerated stylized lighting.
I know, well, obviously they were like, okay, we're filming a movie, so we don't have to do just the because like when you're shooting TV, you've got the lighting rig that you've got. Everything's evenly lit because you're doing, if everyone nailed their marks and hit their lines, you're printing that take and you're moving on to the next scene, versus this one where, you know, it's like, hey, we can do as many takes as we want to get what we want, and we can adjust the lighting and make everything more dramatic. And I feel like they overdid it. I also know that they had a completely different like production team for the movie than for the TV show. Like they had different camera crew and lighting and everything like that. Like they were all different people. So I also wonder too if it was a completely new vision of like, okay, I'm fresh to this set. Here's how I want to light it, without really considering how it had been done before.
Yeah.
So maybe there's that aspect of it that's a little jarring.
Yeah, I just found it was a little strange, and it felt, I think I agree with you saying like it felt a little overdone. It wasn't offensive. It just stuck out. And I was just like, that's a little odd. I guess my final production side thing is, and this is, I laughed out loud at this, which is just that rocket prop at the end. I don't know what they were I don't know what they were thinking with that. I don't know, like it took me out of the movie so bad. I was like, I literally shouted out, like when it hit the sun, I'm like, he shot a bottle rocket into the sun. Like it looks like a bottle rocket. It makes like a
it's a chemical propelled rocket. Yeah, like in order for it to hit the sun, it should have been going at warp. Because like we're assuming if this is an M-class planet that it's probably around Earth distance from its sun, so that should take 8 minutes at most if you're flying like even at light speed.
You see the rocket just like shrink down and immediately hit the sun, and I was just like, damn, that was funny. I know they didn't like.
It's like, I think I'm okay to like give them allowances for that, because like we don't want to sit around and wait. Okay, that's been fired. Now we're gonna wait 8 minutes for it to get there, and then 8 minutes for the light to hit us back because we're dealing with, you know, hard science fiction. No,
the timing is less important to me than the prop of the rocket not selling that the rocket could go that fast. Like they could have just made it a laser or something. Like they have the creative control, but the combination just made it so funny to me. This idea that like this little tiny like World War II era rocket like is gonna just crash into the sun and immediately like cause a galactic event, like, or a solar system event. Like I was just like, nah, I'm not buying it. It made me laugh too hard. That was just very funny to me. I mean, like even other stuff in that scene, like them fighting over a TV remote, was kind of funny to me, but like that's acceptable because they love doing that in Star Trek. They love having little remote controls that people fight over, and like that
people have a fist fight over.
yeah.
Also, like for a long time, I had felt that if you were going to give Kirk a proper send off, that he should be doing something captainy. But honestly, this time going through it and watching it, I'm like, Kirk spent most of the original series punching dudes in rubber suits at Vasquez Rocks.
It's his favorite thing to do.
It is his thing. It is the thing people think of when they think of
like,
Star Trek. It is Kirk fighting the Gorn at Vasquez Rocks. And so, like, you know, having him punch a guy on top of some desert mountain, perfect. Yeah, that's definitely that's his jam. He wakes up early to do that.
I liked it. I liked that part. Like, I don't have any problem with the way that they that sent him off, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I like the oh my as well. Although
I think that was a great choice by Shatner.
My partner did not. So I do think it's I can see the polarizing effect there, but I liked it. I thought it was perfect for him. Yeah, he seemed to be having a lot of fun with the little action sequence, which it is very funny. And I couldn't help but think about a very famous moment in Metal Gear Solid 4, a game which notoriously ends with an incredibly long fight scene between two extremely old guys who are just like, they're literally like, it goes on, the fight just keeps going on because they keep injecting themselves, and then they start injecting each other with stimulants so they can keep fighting. It goes like so far over the top. It's so funny. Like, literally they both inject each other with a stimulant in the neck at the same time so they can keep fighting each other. And it's like, that reminded me of that. I'm just like, oh my God, the old guy fight on the bridge, the old guy fight on the tower. Oh my God, we're having Metal Gear Solid 4 in Star Trek. I love it. That part, no problems, no complaints. I even liked his silly, even though it's a big trope, the silly like bridge jump part. I was like, oh, this is some good like pulpy action. Like,
it's an adventure. It's an adventure thing. It's like Indiana Jones type stuff there.
I don't know. All of that was fine. The Nexus. What are people's thoughts about the Nexus?
I like that it's kind of like a parallel to addiction. Like, I thought that was just interesting. I know that that's not like a primary theme of this, but it is just like kind of interesting. And the more we get like little peeks behind the curtain of Guinan as well, I like that. So her being like, I tried to forget this place because it was pure bliss. Like that, just that like tension. And then like that being like a primary motivation for Soren, just like really wanting to get that hit again, basically. And like being willing to go to such extreme lengths to get there. The Nexus itself, I think it's so interesting. It's gotta be like some current present telepathic connection that it makes, because I don't actually think that Jean-Luc Picard would have his happily ever after with a swarm of children at Christmas. Like, that's got to be some very recent feelings that it's tapping into for him.
The fact that he lost his family. I mean, that is the you know, him thinking about his legacy, thinking about a life he could have had. He's expressed regrets in the show about never having had a family himself, but you know, it's not in the cards. The life of a starship captain is not exactly conducive to raising a family. And I think it was good. It was a good thing to see. Okay, here's what could have been. Here's what he has in his fantasies, and now he gets to live that out.
I'm just criticizing it from a science fiction standpoint of like, that's not pure joy. Like, you fucked up by bringing his nephew into it. Like, there's complex emotions with that. That's not pure bliss. Like, I actually don't know what the fuck Guinan was talking about. But from a storytelling standpoint, like, I mean, I actually enjoyed all of the kind of stuff about like the parallel arcs between Kirk and Jean-Luc of like, they both are ambitious men. This hasn't really left room in their lives for this thing. They have feelings of regret around it. And they both kind of confront those feelings of regret in really different ways. And so, I do think like, as far as thematically and tying things together, it does make sense that Jean-Luc would be confronted by the plot with those feelings in particular and have to make that pivotal choice of, just like recognizing like, either you can have blissful eternity or do your duty. And of course, he chooses his duty because he's consistent. And like, so does Kirk. That is kind of, to me, how those feelings get resolved for both of them, is that they both embrace their nature and are able to set aside those feelings of like, I could have done it over. I could have, done something different before or something. So I guess that's kind of what the Nexus accomplished for Picard.
I should also point out, like, if we're doing the sci-fi critique of it, that Soren got what he wanted, even when they went back and stopped him, because the Nexus exists outside of time, which means once Soren entered in there, he was in there. Sure, they went back in time and stopped Soren, but like the reason Picard got in there in the first place was because Soren succeeded. So Soren was in there. So when Picard left, Soren didn't suddenly vanish from there because the Nexus exists outside of time. So there's a version of Soren that gets to live out his happily ever after.
That's interesting.
And those 300 million people that we don't see on Viridian 4, they get to live still.
Yeah.
I kind of hated the Nexus in all of the ways that it functioned in the movie, largely for what you touched on, Moss, which is this like, that's not what pure joy looks like. So I'll compare this with perhaps my single favorite episode of Star Trek ever, the pilot to DS9, a episode that if I think about it too much, it makes me cry.
It's a very good one.
It is phenomenal. And in that episode, Sisko, Captain Sisko, he is brought into this beyond time space within a wormhole, wherein there exist entities that are like beyond time themselves. And in a dialogue with these entities, he works out his view on events and helps to teach these entities like his experience with linear time. And through that, there's like this almost like collaboration between this beyond time enigma and himself. And in this movie, it almost seems like the Nexus is trying to do the same thing, but is set up and described and built in a way that is not that. So the Nexus is meant to be this temptation to like deviate from what is true to yourself. Like, I need to be among the stars making a difference. But also it serves to like, you know, like Moss said, it doesn't present Picard with the ideal world for himself. An ideal world for himself would be like, oh, I am the captain of the Enterprise and I have a family here and my son is following in my footsteps and blah, blah, blah. And the same goes for Kirk, especially, because it's like, we know Kirk's ideal life is not on his ranch making eggs. Like,
yeah. We see it in Star Trek too, when McCoy is just like, you got to get your ship back, man. Otherwise, you're just going to be another fossil like everything else in your collection.
Yeah.
Their best destiny is aboard a starship.
Yeah. So I was just sitting there going like, what they didn't really use the Nexus well. They didn't set it up well. And I think it would have been more compelling, way more compelling, if we first see Captain Picard go, oh my God, this is my ideal situation, but I need to remember that this isn't real. That like the temptation to live in an illusion that is perfect is not the same as making a difference, which is the final message of the movie is, you know, you have to be where you can make a difference. And I think it would have been more compelling if we saw Picard come to that conclusion and then go and meet Kirk, where Kirk is more vulnerable to this sort of like, fuck it. It's perfect in here. Who cares at this point? You know, at the juncture that he's at in his life, he's kind of like, I don't know, he's at a point where it kind of seems like he's checking out a little bit. Not quite, but a little bit. And then he needs the reminder from this, like, you know, maybe you go and you see Kirk's world and it's like he's an admiral and he has all these kids and he gets to go on any ship that he wants to whenever he wants and everyone always respects his orders and this kind of like fantasy. But they just didn't quite do that. And I don't know.
I think there is a very Roddenberry-esque secular humanist philosophy interspersed throughout using the Nexus. It feels to me like a rejection of heaven, a rejection of paradise, where it's like people can waste their lives thinking that there's something better in an afterlife. And here we've got Picard and Kirk basically getting that afterlife. They're functionally in heaven. And they reject it because they're like, no, there are important things to do and we can do them. We need to be doing that. We need to make our lives mean something. We can't just live here forever in perfect bliss. From that aspect, I do like its thematic use.
I guess I can see that. And I wish that if it was built up more by other aspects of the story, if the movie had been structured differently, I do think it would have, even in its current form, it could have functioned better. But I see what you're saying on that, and I think I can get that.
I did kind of see the comparison to The Good Place. Like, I guess I made this comment in my notes toward the beginning about the ships that initially get swept up with the ribbon. I was like, well, I guess like now that I've seen this movie one time, I now know that these people maybe didn't die and they just got sucked into having forever orgasms in the Nexus. Unclear as to whether that's the case. But
another thing, you mentioned the like sci-fi angle of it, which I think it would have been. Obviously, would have been a totally different movie, but I think it would have been funny and interesting if they had like Soren teleport back out to stop them from stopping him, and then Kirk and Picard teleport out to stop him from stopping them. Yeah, until
more Picards and Kirks, just like a mountain full of them.
Yeah, until they finally like resolve it, like through philosophy or whatever. That would have been very a Picard way of like ending the movie. Is like, okay, we keep using this time loop until we find one of us finally convinces the other one of the worldview, and then like we go, okay, let's stop this loop now, and then all of them except for the original disappear, and Soren's like, you're right, I can't do this, like stops the button or whatever. But it just doesn't really make sense for Soren's character, but it would have been great.
It almost sounds like something that Lower Decks might do, because Mike McMahon was the showrunner on Lower Decks, and he was also a showrunner on Rick and Morty, and there's some very Rick and Morty aspects to Lower Decks. So just the idea of multiples of them just keep showing up, that's very Rick and Morty. Yeah. So if Mike McMahon was making this movie, maybe that's how he would have ended it.
I want to see that now. I want to see the Lower Decks version of this movie.
I liked so many things about this movie that you guys didn't like.
Oh,
it's crazy. Yeah, you and I, like every single time DemonMama, I'm like, damn, we watched different fucking movies. Like,
I mean, yeah, or like, we do have very different approaches.
You notice things about movies that I don't notice, and that helps open up some things. I'm like, I wasn't really thinking about the lighting in the first half of the movie, but it was a little bit weird. Yeah, so it's just not the kind of thing that I pay attention to. So I'm mostly like, yeah, I like Data as a character a lot. So I will say, something that I did not evaluate and that I have criticized other movies in the past for is like how much this movie kind of depends on you having watched some other thing previously. That I'm invested in Data because of 7 seasons of TNG. I'm not invested in Data because of this movie. It doesn't give you much time in that way, where it's it's an ensemble cast for a thing that has been going for years, and they expect you to have seen it. And I respect that. That's fine. I do find it annoying with other things, and I'm just recognizing a double standard there where, it's like, oh, you expected me to watch all of WandaVision to be able to understand this movie. I did finally watch WandaVision. It was fine. But I was like annoyed that they expected me to fill in the blanks by watching their TV show that I didn't want to watch. So I just recognized that was, whatever. But I liked the Data thing in the sense of, I agree with, DemonMama said earlier that it is like a child experiencing things for the first time. And I've been just like thinking about and noticing children more lately in storylines. And yeah, I guess I kind of enjoyed that there's so much in here that taps into that, like the emotional experiencing an emotion for the very first time, and also having the chip literally overloading your positronic whatever. We don't resolve that. Kind of annoying. I guess he just glitched for a minute and then it was fine. Also, I will fight anybody, Steve Shives, who says that Data didn't experience emotions before having the chip installed, like throughout the entirety of the series.
Yeah,
I'll fight
that's
somebody.
That's the big thing for me, and that's something, like, again, about the fanfic that I'm working on. A big realization that Data is going to have is that he always had these emotions. The chip has just basically allowed him to understand and express them in an holistic manner. There are so many things. There's moments where you see Data express love and mourning and rage. There's an episode of TNG where it implies that Data straight up tried to murder a guy and he was totally justified for doing it. It's just that he doesn't have a neurotypical understanding of those emotions, and he doesn't have the human like endorphin feelings associated with them in the same way. So his brain is different, and so it analyzes these things different. But he obviously has drives. And that's what emotions are. They're physiological drives. They're things that's like, oh, I like that. I don't like that. I'm reacting this way to that because of that situation. It's they're not just these nebulous things. They've evolved for purposes. And Data without them wouldn't do anything. He would just sit there waiting for instructions.
Yeah, I think especially of like his in TNG, he keeps all of Tasha Yar's stuff.
Yeah.
And like it's clear that there is an emergent characteristic to emotions that aren't just based on pure endorphins, but that is a natural conclusion of going, this person is somebody who I, enjoyed being around, who was kind to me and who understood me in some way. And that person is no longer here. So he does have some understanding of that, even if he, like you said, like the way he processes them is different. And I don't know. I don't disagree at all with the idea that there's like something in the Data storyline. I just wish it had the screen time to fully develop.
And I wish that Deanna had been there to help him through some of that. Also, because as established already on the show, Deanna can sense android emotions when the emotion chip is in play, because there was an episode with Lore.
Yes.
He had stolen the emotion chip and she was able to sense his rage. So, just utilize her in the way that she was conceived of as the ship's counselor, to provide counsel to somebody who's going through android puberty.
Yeah.
I wonder if it felt like it would be too repetitive to have her
both
involvement in both of those storylines.
I understand
And the focus
that.
was clearly on Picard. Like, I do think you're right.
Yeah,
And I think it's a valid criticism that Data's was more played. Well, it was played for laughs in a lot of different ways. It was obviously treated quite seriously at times, where he's like paralyzed by fear and trying to work through that. And obviously Jean-Luc could have connected with him, but instead he's dealing with his own shit. So he's just like, I need you to fucking get it together, please. Yeah. Just do your shit, please. I need to be able to rely on you right now. Yeah, so there are some valid criticisms there for sure.
So what else? What else? You said you had a couple that were there. I want to hear them.
Yeah, I guess I liked or at least I didn't feel like it was unresolved, the feelings of legacy and stuff at the end for Jean-Luc or Kirk. Like I said, I think that them both embracing that aspect of themselves was, to me, like a good resolution. The kinds of things that I liked about this movie were the subtle things, like him picking up his family photo album out of the rubble of the ship at the end of the thing, like little things like that. And oh my God, hold on one second. Oh, speaking of Rick and Morty, the guy with the camera at the very beginning of the movie reminded me of Aaron Hansen voiced like the robot photographer at Birdman's wedding or whatever. Just like staring at somebody with a rig on your face. Like, it's very funny to me. Yeah. And I guess like I enjoyed the emotional arc for Picard, whereas there were some criticisms of it. Like, I think, obviously his arc is much more like Data's than I think we realize in some ways, because Picard is an emotionally repressive guy who, when he goes through something hard, deals with it mostly by himself, as evidenced by him getting sucked into that probe and living out an entire life. And then he wakes up and there's like the flute. And he's clearly emotionally devastated, but he's like, don't worry about it. I'm fine. And so him opening up to Deanna in this case, I thought was like pretty out of the ordinary for him, like an extreme level of grief that he has not prior experienced, not experienced before. And that he is short with people. And he's like, I need you to just do your fucking job, please. To Riker in particular at the beginning, when Riker was like pressing a little bit and he's like, that's it. Can you leave now? So yeah, I thought that was a relatively realistic portrayal of how somebody would be going through grief, that it does seem to change you kind of all of a sudden. It hits you and then your entire shit is different for at least a few days. And then also you're dealing with high stress situations that require you to set that aside. And his frustration with Data in being like, I had to put my shit aside to deal with this. And now I need you to get all of your shit and put it together in one place. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything different to offer you than what you saw in the movie, but I just liked it. I just enjoyed it more.
No, I'm happy to hear it. Yeah. Yeah. I think that the Picard emotional arc is definitely like, it is the emotional center of the movie. And one thing I will say, building off what you said, that I like about both Picard and Kirk, given that this movie, you did mention like this movie is one of those movies that requires you to have seen a lot of stuff. And I do generally have critiques of that for movies that are like that. But the Star Trek movies have firmly been in that camp. There's not many of them that don't do that. They're just like, this is for Trek fans. Like, deal with it. Maybe the only exception being the motion picture, where that's a very like movie. It's like in the movie, it teaches you what you need to know about all the characters. But with that in mind and that set aside, I do like that both Picard and Kirk in this movie represent the like show and movie completed versions of themselves, and they're dealing with like a kind of a new problem. Kirk in the beginning, we see that like while he is struggling with some of the things that he used to, like they keep saying, oh, is there something wrong with your seat? Because he keeps wanting to stand up. He has it under control. It's hard for him, but he has it under control now, which he definitely did not in the previous movies. He definitely, absolutely did not. So it's nice to see him at the, like, them not redo that again. And the same thing goes for Picard, where we see him having learned what he learned in the TV show as a character. We see him at that point and now dealing with something even greater that tests the limits of everything that he's learned in the show. I think that's a great part. That is something I really like about this movie.
Yeah, I think the TOS kind of rehashed those things several times in the movies and got old.
I would say that another plus for Kirk's death is that it has a thematic through line with Star Trek V, which involved Kirk having an almost death by falling off of a mountain. And in this movie, he dies by falling off of a mountain.
Oh, yeah, true.
In Star Trek V, he told them, he's like, I knew I wasn't going to die because I've always known I'll die alone. And while he's not technically alone in that there's nobody else around him, he is alone. He doesn't know Picard. And he's dying in a way that no one's even going to mourn him because they've already mourned him 80 years ago. They don't know that he was still alive all this time. Like if you technically Spock and McCoy are still alive at this point. If you went and told them, hey, Kirk just died, they'd be like, he died 80 years ago. No, he was actually alive in the Nexus, but then he came back and now he's dead. They'd be like, okay, thanks for that information, but I already mourned him, so I don't know what to do with that.
But his body, though. But his body, please. Like a decorated Starfleet officer, a pivotal, like historical figure, a cairn on a mountainside on fucking Viridian 4. Come on.
That Picard had to haul back up that mountain because he fell off the mountain. I have to point out that he must have lugged the corpse all the way back up there.
Bring it into the shuttle with you. Or I guess maybe you could beam it up later, but still, like, man, come on.
Tell somebody. Tell somebody.
Yeah, for real. I like that Data got to get an oh shit. That was fun for me.
That was the first shit said in Star Trek. Actually, well, it's the first shit said in Star Trek in English. Picard did say merde in a season 1 episode when they were still remembering that he was French.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even here, when he's like, in the Nexus and envisioning his hypothetical family, they're very English.
Yes.
I just have to right here at the end say that it was such an ambitious shot of the Enterprise crashing, and I really love it. And I want to see
they did it for real. They did it with miniatures. That wasn't CGI. Yeah, it was so good.
Beautiful. I want to see the VFX artists go over that scene if they haven't already.
I have the DVD extras. I could probably rip that for you. So, with that being said, thank you all so much for joining us. Next time, we will be doing Star Trek First Contact.
All right.
Until then, I've been Gayfish.
I'm Moss.
And I'm DemonMama.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.